this is where I really differentiate as like a hypno coach versus a hypnotherapist, because a hypnotherapist is typically dealing with someone who's like, I have like a big fear or a big trauma. And my thing is more like, I'm helping you step into like a desire or like a joy you have, and inevitably we're going to go to those places.
Hey guys, this episode is brought to you by Overstock Dixie. You can go like and follow their Instagram. There's new items that pop up on there every day, multiple times a day. Anything from furniture to tools, electronics, pretty much anything you're looking for. Hey guys, welcome back to the Derick Leg Podcast. We are in the vault today, episode 63. We've got a guest that we are going to get out of my comfort zone a little bit because I don't know anything about this. So it's going to be fun to dive into what her profession is and see where this goes. So this will be a good episode. This is Lea Fuentes. How's it going?
Hello, it's good. How are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm kind of excited for this. We've brought people on that it's not necessarily my background, what they specialize in. And I've always been like, we don't turn anybody down.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point. Like, we're here to really put someone on a pedestal and guide you through their journey. So we'll get into what you do, but it's just one of those things where I'm like, I don't know a lot about it. So I'm going to kind of let you guide it, and we're just going to go down the road and see where we end up.
Yeah, totally. There's a lot of cool things to talk about, so I think it'll be easy.
Yeah, so typically I like to kind of do just a very, very short background on you. Mm-hmm. Maybe where you were born, how you got into this, maybe a little bit of family, and then we just jump right in.
Yeah.
So I'll let you kind of take that away.
Okay. How do I make this short? So my background, I actually used to be a registered nurse, which I think is cool because that still sort of ties into everything I do. But I was a registered nurse in California. I was born in Thousand Oaks, California. And somewhere along the way in my nursing career, I was struggling a lot with just like knowing who I am. Like I always say, if you ask me if I like mashed potatoes or French fries, like which one I wanted, I wouldn't be able to tell you. And I also had really bad social anxiety, like severe social anxiety. And I started seeing a hypnotherapist. It completely changed my life. Simultaneously, I was experiencing a ton of burnout in my profession, as a spinal cord injury nurse. So I'm this like 115-pound girl, 112-pound girl, and I'm getting quadriplegics up in their wheelchair with the ceiling lift all by myself, doing everything for them. And I would just come home from work like so depleted. And one day I was just like sitting there in my kitchen nook with my boyfriend, and I was like, I'm going to become a hypnotherapist. And he was like, no, you're not. Like, you have like a really good job, babe. Like at the time I was a federal nurse. So starting right out the gate from school, I was making, over six figures, like getting double pay on holidays, bonuses. Like it was, to someone who wants a steady Eddie job, it was like a dream come true.
Yeah.
But I couldn't do it. I wanted to help people. And what I realized was that like, I wasn't able to actually help people. I was just like maintaining like this place that they had put themselves in. I was like enabling almost in some essence, not saying that the injury themselves was the thing, but like the illnesses and the ailments along with it. So, I decided to get trained by my personal hypnotherapist to go into hypnotherapy. And I kind of just like jumped full force. Like I had no clients, nothing. I just quit my job and built my business from there. And now I do hypno coaching essentially.
See, that's amazing. Like that's the fear part that no one can get over. You had like the steady job, probably the 401k, the benefits, the retirement. And like I think the generation before us, that's the dream. I mean, so I worked at the post office for a short stint, and everyone's like, man, you got regular at the post office. Benefits are great. Retirement's great. And when I sat down with the postmaster to sign my paperwork to be like full time, and he's like, congratulations, you're going to retire in 32 years or 33 years or whatever it was. And I was like 27 at the time. I was like, this does not even interest me. And kind of, I had that same, switch flip as you, like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not doing this for 32 years. I need to start building something.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason they call it the golden handcuffs because on one hand, you're like, I'm supposed to be happy. I have benefits, I have pension, and like pension's great. The idea of just retiring and basically getting paid everything the same amount almost of what you've been paid, plus you've already paid into your own retirement, like that's sounds super cushy, but I agree. Like when people told me, oh my gosh, you're so lucky you got in so young. You're going to be able to retire at 45. I was like, oh, my heart hurts right now. Like this sounds like an actual death sentence, you know?
Well, and I think for
So,
people like us, that's what it is. Because there's other people that are like, great, I'm here. I'll put in my, well, I mean, I would say, 9 to 10 hours for me, but you might have been doing longer hours than that. But I'm
yeah.
just going to put in my time and then I'll smooth sail the rest of my life. Right.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, as a federal nurse, nurses usually work 12s. I was working 3 12s and an extra 8 every other week. So I would do like 30, what is that? Like 8 times 3, I would do or I'd do 36. And then the next week
Like
I would do
44.
44. Yeah, we would always be doing overtime. So that was a lot. But yeah, I mean, that's how right? Like you said, it's like, that's how that you just are meant for something different, something more. Also I'm like ADHD, like I think those things tie into it too. You're like, I just can't sit in these like fluorescent lights. I need to be like doing something with my life, have those breaks. So yeah, I just knew, and I'm just happy that the desire to not experience that was strong enough for me that it wasn't even like a question. Like, yes, it was scary to make the leap at some point, but as soon as I did it, it's like a roller coaster, Like, as soon as you go down the drop, you're like, wow, that was really fun. Like, I want to do that again. So
So you had
yeah.
you had a thrill from that, because most people are like terrified instantly, but you had a little bit of a thrill, it sounds like.
Yes, yes, totally. It was terrifying, but it was really exciting at the same time.
Yeah. I I've talked about this before on here, but there's a study out there that when you're nervous and when you're excited, nervous isn't the right word, but it's the same chemical release, but how you've trained your brain, that's how it actually interprets it. And so like for me, like I was brought up being cautious, I was brought up being scared, fear, like don't make a mistake. You want your credit score to be perfect, all these different things. And so I always had like that fear aspect that would come into me, not excitement, right? And so, but
Yeah.
it sounds like, I don't know if you were raised differently or not, but it sounds like you had that little bit of excitement that came through. So that's actually, it's rare, I think. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I was literally in the bathroom, like, okay, I'm going to tell my manager I'm quitting. I'm about to go in there. I got this. Like, it was very anxiety provoking to go do it. But as soon as I did it, there was like a ton of relief that came with it. And, actually, it might be because of my parents that I was so brave to do it, but I would say not because they're brave. I would say the exact opposite. They are so about comfort, never have made the changes they needed to make in their life to get like out of the places they didn't love about their life. And I just was like, I would just watch them and be like, so frustrated for them. I'm like, you just have to make a different decision and you can change the outcome. And they didn't. They live this same cycles their whole life. And so I think for me, my whole life has been dedicated to growth because of that. Like I can't stand to sit in complacency.
Well, yeah, comfort zone. I mean, I did like a little one-on-one or like I was solo and I did a little talk on comfort zone, and it was never explained to me in any type of way. And so for you to be able to be brought up and recognize that, that's cool, because it really is. If you want to progress in anything, the worst thing you can do is be comfortable. And you lived
Yes.
through it.
Yes, like I mean, I think all of us experience that in some essence with
Sure.
our parents, but with my parents is a very extreme where you're like, you don't like this thing. It's so obvious. Just like push yourself. But, like my mom has a lot of anxiety. Like there's elements where they settled, and that's okay. But it taught me, we learn the most from our family, what we want to do and also what we don't want to do. And it was a great teacher for me. And then, now I have the control to make those changes for, even like I already think about like my kids and things like that. So
Yeah. Yeah. Having a kid's different. Like it's been the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And I've talked extensively on like, I would question to even do it again, type of thing,
yeah.
because it was so hard for us. But it definitely changes the path that you feel like I mean, whether you want it to or not. And being a business owner, I think it does it even more because it's like, okay, now I have something to build and stack on and like not even just build a business, but build a full environment around this kid and this person that can take advantage of it, hopefully one day, right? Instead of
Yeah.
being like you're like, and it's not a knock, but I just don't understand how someone could do a 9 to 5 and then have kids and be like not trying to push to put a better environment out there for their kids,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. Yeah, even when I was, becoming a nurse, I knew that would give me like flexibility with having kids. But even that, so many people, once they get their nursing job, they start having kids because they have this safe, comfortable environment now and this stable income. And I was just like, this still, for me, if I was going to have kids, I was like, I know I'm going to not want to leave my kid. Like, I see them coming back to work and I'm just like, that seems so hard, So I'm really grateful to be now building something where I'll have that freedom with them, and also like definitely does encourage you to want to build a bigger empire. Although like the catch side is that you're always like, well, let's put that off a little longer because I can do more in my business when I have all of me.
Sure.
So that's the flip side to that. But
I mean, that was kind of us. I wanted to be a little bit older before I had kids anyway. But my wife was going through nursing and got her master's. And so it was kind of
okay.
like, let's get her through her nurse practitioner and then we'll kind of have the conversation about kids. But
Mm-hmm.
even when she was ready and trying to talk me into it, I was like, we're too busy. I have too many things going on. Like, how do you fit this in? It won't make sense. Like I know how, unless you can make more than 24 hours in a day, it just doesn't make sense.
I know. And that's what people say. They're like, there's never going to be the time. So anchoring into that sometimes is helpful, but
Yeah. Well, I think getting yourself, like, you'll never be financially set enough to have a kid because you'll just keep on prolonging it if that's your goal. But I think there is something to say of having somewhat of the emotional maturity, the being stable financially. There's definitely parts of that you can clear up and make solid before you jump into having kids, I think. And
yeah.
then hopefully having that stability and raising kids, would benefit that kid versus just chaos and stress all the time.
Yeah, totally. You hear from people all the time. They're like, you make it work. And while I think that's so true, it's like for me, knowing all the things, I mean, hypno being a big part of this part of my life, like knowing all the things I had to heal through, I'm just like, why I would rather not have kids until I really know I can give them like my 100%. Not to say that things will be perfect. Like I know there'll be bumps in the road. You can't plan for it all. But just knowing that like I can 100% be my best self, because like the things that you don't work on, like those are the things your kids have generational trauma from and they have to heal from. And me and my partner, we always talk about it. We're like, how cool that like I'm working in these parts of my business and you're working on these parts of business, and it's like together our kids will have opportunity to do anything. Like if they want to do real estate, if they want to do e-commerce, if they want to do a service-based business, like whatever it is, we can teach them so young a different way of thinking, and that's really cool.
Yeah, being aware.
Yeah,
and
yes.
and being aware and being able to make them aware.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, totally.
Versus like just running, working overtime, trying to keep the lights on. Like it's just a different. And I don't know how to do it another way because I had a kid when I was
Yeah.
31. And so that was when we
Yeah.
had our first kid. And so it's a little different, I think, for me because I don't know the other side, but I feel pretty confident in what we've built and now we brought William into the situation that we've built now. Like we
Yeah.
controlled that.
Yeah.
That was a planned thing.
Yeah.
And I guess ask me in 20 years if it worked out. I feel good
Yeah.
about it, but
Well, like that's my personality too, coming into that of like, I don't know, like trying to be overly like de-stress, like minimize anything like that. But like most people, it's really about the journey, right? It's like if it's hard for a certain period of time or you wish you did it different, but you come out like in a really good place on the other side, or even just like seeing all the things that you were able to get through together, it's like none of that stuff even matters. In fact, that actually makes the experience that much richer. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just trying to bypass some of the things, and it would be better if I was just jumping right in. But I don't think there's like a right way. That's just kind of like the philosophy I took on because of the way I grew up, you know?
Sure. Yeah. And that's all you know. You only know
Yeah.
the way you grew up. So you're navigating your life the best you can.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Well, let's get in and talk about, so we already ranted once. So let's get in a little bit more into the hypnotherapist, is hypnotherapist, right?
So,
Hypnotherapy.
yeah, I kind of like to go under the umbrella like a hypno coach, but
Hypno coach.
it's technically like hypnotherapy that I do with my clients. I just don't necessarily label under therapy because sometimes people associate that with like therapy, like psychotherapy, you know.
Okay. So tell me how that works. Tell me, well, first let me back up a little bit. Tell me, you kind of touched on how you got into it. What does it take to become a coach? When you said you did the training with your personal, now I don't know if I should
call her a hypnotherapist. That's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of training with her. Like, what did that entail to get you to the point where you could start taking on your own clients?
Yeah. So really becoming a hypnotherapist, there's like a couple different ways. For me, I was personally mentored with her, and it was just like a weekend of us training together. And like obviously I knew somewhat of things because I worked with her for like a year. You also can do more intensive programs. And just to clarify, I've done other training since then, but just to get your feet wet and get into the profession. There's like a school that's actually, I don't know for sure, but I think it's like 2 years,
Okay.
2-3 years. Like there's a school that's actually like going to like a full on college essentially. And then there's also these like NLP certifications that are typically like intensives that are like, I want to say they're like a week. Don't quote me on these exact dates, but they're like, it's like a week of like these 8-10 hour days, and you can get your certification through like that, like a portion of that course.
Okay. So I like what you said. So I've talked about this before, where if you're kind of interested in something or it's something you want to go into, find someone that's doing it and shadow them. And so that's pretty much what you did. Like you kind of let her be a mentor for you. It's a her, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Let her be a mentor for you. And you just kind of really just picked it up from her. It's like, hey, she's really good at it. I want to go get involved in that. I want to sit in with her. And so I think people bypass that so often. I think personally that you can learn more by going and seeing someone do it and sitting with them and seeing them do it than you can in any book.
Oh yeah.
And so like not shitting on school or anything, like I'm not doing that, but I think being involved and seeing someone go through their day to day that's doing it well, there's no better way to learn than that.
Totally. You know, you learn so much through books and the teachings and like whatever they put together for I forget I don't know the right word to use, but like the
Like the course.
Yeah, that's not the right word I'm thinking of, but yeah, you get what I mean. Like the things the process that they take you through, and it helps you to think about it a certain way. But as far as application, it's never the same as when you go out and do it. I mean, nursing school is like that. It's like we learned all this stuff, and then when we finally got to go out and like be a real nurse, even after our like clinicals, it was like, okay, like what did I even learn?
Yeah.
Like I don't even feel comfortable putting like a stethoscope on a patient barely. And I'm supposed to take care of them. And you know, hypnosis is very much the same way. Like a lot of people that get hypnosis certifications, they never use them. And it's because they don't feel confident. And the reason is that they need to get someone that's going to let them shadow. That's what I say. If like you're wanting to get into hypnosis, find someone who either will mentor you, who will let you shadow, who you can pay to get in proximity with. Like all of those pieces will completely transform the way you're able to show up in the craft.
Yeah. So after you kind of shadowed her, then what did you do from there? Was there other classes you took, or did you dive right in?
Yeah. So I technically with her, I did a course. Like she actually certifies people.
Okay.
So yeah, she did like demos and stuff, but I didn't technically like shadow with her. Then I just started my business basically, and I asked her and like consulted with her on a couple of things, on like the phone and stuff like that. But I kind of just dove right in, and I really worked with clients for like a year with just those basic pieces. Like it helped a lot that I had done a ton of my own personal development. Like I had basically spent like a year of my life, more than that, honestly, with that being like basically another full-time job for me. Like I was reading all the time, learning so much. So I felt aware of like the topics that people were bringing up. And then I did go ahead and get a coaching certification just because outside of the hypnosis, I wanted to feel more prepared to hold space and like the way to respond to how people share deep things about their life. So that was helpful. But then I've gone back since then and I've done an additional certification intensive. So that was like, I don't know, like 30 hours or something like that. And now I'm mentoring with someone again. And I'm like in almost like a mastermind type group. So that's
Awesome.
really powerful.
Yeah. So is there a large group of people that are doing this, like in Utah or Southern Utah?
It's funny you say that because my mentor is actually in Utah.
Really?
He's in Salt Lake.
Okay.
And a lot of the people that are in his hypnosis pod or mastermind type thing, they are also in Utah. But I wouldn't say there's like a ton of people. There's maybe like 10 of us and a handful of us are from Utah.
Cool.
So, but interestingly enough, I thought when I moved to Utah that people would be like, oh, she's so weird, like hypnosis, because the church and things are so big here. And it's actually the #1 search state for the term hypnotherapy.
Really? Why do you think that is?
Probably like certain like dynamics around like mental health and sexuality, I'm thinking. I would, if I had to guess, with the church. I don't know though, because St. George I've heard is kind of like a Sedona almost and sort of like the hippie area of Utah. So who knows? Maybe it's just the culture of the people here are open-minded.
Yeah. Well, and it's
either way.
becoming more that way too.
Yes.
I mean, 20 years ago when I moved here, it was less that way than it is now.
Oh yeah.
But
I can imagine.
Yeah, all people from California, right? Like the people moving in and the people coming in here and the people that have lived here. And like you brought up the church, right? So people that have lived here their whole lives that are kind of detaching from that and trying to find alternate ways. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of it is kind of the fall away from religion and not even the fall away, but just trying to find other means,
Yeah.
It may be having other confidence and other ways to do it. I was going to say the other thing is like the church. So like I'm LDS, right? So like we don't drink, we don't do drugs, we don't do that stuff. And so it's just another out. Like it's another way to process everything.
Yeah.
It's like why I think opioids is such a big thing in Utah is because we're not encouraged to drink, but we're encouraged to take medications, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just another way to deal with that. Totally. And so when you came in, that was something I was going to talk about was it's another way to kind of detach. Like when we were talking before we got on, it really narrows down and can ultra focus your mentality and your brain into, I don't know the right word, manipulating. That's not the right word. To changing.
Suggestibility.
There you go.
Yeah.
Bail me out.
No manipulation.
That's not the word I wanted.
No manipulation happening. Suggestibility.
Yeah. See, I don't say words that big.
Oh, that's
it's too many syllables.
Yeah. No, it's okay. It's good. We're debunking as we go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing we kind of talked about was when people think about hypnotherapy, being hypnotized, a hypnotist, right? It's like a stage thing. Like I didn't know how to explain that, and you were like, well, a stage hypnotist. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's what it's called then.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of what people think when they are brought up. That's the popular thing. And so tell me like what you guys do that's kind of the same and the things that you do that are different from that and how you guys can narrow down to, like, I don't know if medical is the right word, but how you can benefit from that.
Yeah. So we were talking about earlier, just like stage hypnotism is sort of like the reputation of hypnosis. And actually, surprisingly, though, a lot of people don't even know that. They're just like, I don't know anything about it. Like, I'm open, which has been kind of a neat shift because obviously, like, older generations get that very, like you picture like the little pendulum and the eyes starting to spin.
Like the cartoon way of doing it.
Yeah, like the cartoon. But stage hypnotism and regular hypnosis, like the thing about it is that stage hypnotists are actually very good at hypnosis, and like they deserve a lot of credit because they can truly hypnotize someone right in the spot. And not to say that like someone who does hypnotherapy can't do that necessarily. We're not always like training in those modalities because, you know, we want to get away from that reputation for hypnosis. But essentially it's just suggestibility. Like if I can tell you a set of directions and you're open to following them, then you can be hypnotized. And that's exactly what they do. They have a group of 100 people, say, and of that 100 people, it's inevitable that some of those people are highly hypnotizable, highly suggestible, and then they're volunteering, so they want to be hypnotized. And so they're already like going into that experience fully surrendering, you know? So I don't know if that fully answers the question, but
so like if you think it's crap, you're probably not going to volunteer to go be on stage.
yeah.
So I mean, that almost weeds out most of the people that wouldn't be able to be hypnotized. I guess I hadn't looked at it that way.
Yeah.
Because the show that I had went to, that's kind of what they did. They brought up people. There was maybe 20 people. And then the few people that it wasn't working on, they made them go sit down. And then they just took that other group that it was working on and, you know, did their show. But so what do you need to do to be in that state? Because we kind of talked about, I'll let you give the examples, but it's ones I've heard before about driving. So what do you need to do to kind of make someone think about like, yeah, I've been in that state before?
Yeah. So essentially, like when you think about it, hypnosis deals with your subconscious mind, right? The subconscious mind is not just your brain. Your subconscious mind is every chemical that's circulating through your body at any given moment. So the two examples that I like to share with people is like when you're watching a movie and you're on the edge of your seat and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm nervous. Or like, I'm like you're on the edge of your seat because someone's like in, you know, in a horror movie or something. You are in a hypnotic state because that's not really happening and you're releasing chemicals. You're releasing the same chemicals you would release as if someone was really there in person with you. So in those moments, you know, you could whisper in your partner's ear, hey, I really want you to do the dishes more often. And it might start to take catch a little bit, you know? I'm just kidding. But truly, you are in hypnosis. And also those times where you drive home and you don't remember how you got there, that's hypnosis. Because you technically got there safe because you're all running on automatic, but you are in the hypnotic state.
Yeah, I've done that. I've drove a lot in my life with a couple of jobs that I've had, and like maybe an hour stretch, you know, and 6 days a week. And there were times I'd be driving, and maybe I shouldn't admit this, but like if my insurance guy's listening, turn it off. But like there were times I'd be driving and I would pass people and I didn't remember it. Like I'd be looking in my rearview and I'm like, when did I pass that white car? You know, or like, I don't even remember passing this gas station, or I don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you just get so, like you're saying, on autopilot. It just moves forward and moves forward. So I think that people that would want to say that, you know, something negative about this, that's why I wanted you to bring it up, is I think everybody's had a moment like that.
Yeah. I mean, you're going into hypnosis, I can promise you, at least once a day. So when people are like, I can't be hypnotized, or I'm scared to be hypnotized, it's like, well, you go into hypnosis every day and you don't even notice. So it's really just like a mind over matter kind of thing. And, you know, bringing it back to like the stage hypnotism and like kind of relating that in, it's like hypnosis feels really good, actually. It's so relaxing. It's like, I don't know if you've ever woken up on an alarm and you don't feel like getting up because you're so comfortable. Like you can, it's like you feel this like euphoria in your body of like, oh, this sleep feels so good. Like that's how hypnosis feels a lot of times. I mean, not always, but you can, it's very enjoyable. It's like a massage for like your brain.
So so you're doing Zoom calls and different things. Do you do anything in person?
I don't do in person right now.
Okay.
I have some clients that live in Vegas that potentially want to do in person. So that'll be a fun thing to play with. And like I've done a little bit with my partner, just like practicing modalities and stuff.
Sure.
But in the future, it's a potential, but not right now.
So what is the goal with what you're trying to do? Just teach as many people as you can, help as many people? Or are you trying to get to like a commercial space, or teaching other people and managing them? What's the goal?
Yeah, so I don't really see myself, at least right now, ever teaching, like certifying. I do see myself eventually having like a small group of people where I'm mentoring them after their certification, and like kind of being that person that they can go to for the questions in between. But my bigger mission is really just to normalize hypnosis. Like, it completely changed my life. And I know so many people, it's funny, even my mentor, same thing. Like, he was afraid of flying, then he did hypnosis. He's no longer afraid to fly. He decided to become a hypnotherapist. And now he works with like some of the most incredible, successful, talented people in the world. Like, and it's just, he's seeing his process of helping people, seeing the lives that I've been able to change. Like, hypnosis can seriously change a person's entire life. You know, it takes 600 sessions of therapy and it takes 6 sessions of hypnotherapy to see a change.
Really?
It's like, do the math. It makes no sense why we don't utilize hypnosis. And I think the biggest thing is that it's not standardized. And so it's hard to really like create a way to make it really accessible for people and equal, like an equal transformation, because the skill sets can vary. Not saying we should standardize it though. I'm not saying that would be the answer. But just making it more accessible, like when we can change the culture of hypnosis and show people how effective it is, show people how safe it is, how gentle it is, how enjoyable it is. Like, I think that we could heal so many people and really change the world. Like, there's a lot of trauma that people live with and uncertainty, and there's so many people, you know, who don't know themselves. And it's like, I can promise you, if you are lacking direction right now and you do hypnosis, by the end of it, you won't be able to deny like who you are or what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, there's a thing that Tony Robbins does where he holds his heart so he can feel his heart, and he starts breathing and tries to get them in sync with each other, and he kind of goes into this state of hypnosis with himself. And he does that. He says, if there's a problem that you've just put time into and research into and ask for advice and you just can't figure this out, he says, go into this state. And he actually has a recording where he goes through it. And then he does that where he kind of stops, and they've actually done tests where they hook you up to, you know, the sensors, whatever, with your heart, and they can see it like just get in sync. And then once it's in sync, then he says, now ask yourself the question. And then he's like, keep breathing. And he goes through kind of this meditation with it. And then he's like, you'll have your answer. Just go through this and you'll have your answer. And I kind of feel like that's what you're talking about. And it may not be, but when you were talking about it, I'm like, I guess I've done that a couple times. The other thing I was going to say is, how like specific is it to each person? Like, is this something that you could like build a course with, and someone could buy a course and say, you know, it's flying. And then it just kind of has these steps that you could go through with them, like as a pre-recorded course? Or is it more specific than that?
Yeah. So, I do believe that when it's specific, it's more powerful. So it's a little different than the Joe Dispenza stuff, because I think what he's doing is he's really tapping into your own intuition. And you will do that with hypnosis. Like, you are really going to amplify your own intuition, because we always know. So in that state, I can ask you questions and you will know answers sometimes, like how you said that you didn't realize you knew. And also, though, it's because I'm actually actively taking the things that somebody wants to experience and feel, and I'm like suggesting and rewiring that into their subconscious. So if you're telling me, well, every time I go to speak, I feel anxious and I feel scared, and then I'm going to ask you, well, what do you want to feel instead? Well, I want to feel excited. I want to feel joyful. Like, I'm going to feed that back to you in your session, and the mind is going to start to, essentially, it takes this memory, it opens it up, whatever the original, like I call it the seed, the first memory where you learned that public speaking, say, wasn't safe for you. And then I'm going to throw in these new pieces of this memory where, like, oh wait, it's joyful. Oh wait, it's exciting. And then when the brain recompresses that memory, the memory is confused. Like, it's no longer the same. And then slowly the brain starts to shift the lens, like it's almost like an Instagram filter, right? The lens that you respond through shifts over time until all of a sudden you show up as like a different person. So that is one way that I work with people. And as you can see, that the more specific to the person, the more powerful. And sometimes I do a really specific, unique kind of hypnosis where you're doing release work. So, you know, your trauma or your core primary memories, because just to clarify, it doesn't have to be a traumatic memory, right? It can just be a childhood experience that like you felt some type of way. That's so specific to you. And you can't really release the emotion around that unless you're one-to-one. So that's why like when people are like, oh yeah, like I have guided hypnosis, I'm like, that's super cool. That's a start. But if you want to like really shift your identity, then you want that one-to-one work, you know?
Yeah, you're like, that's like an umbrella. It's very big. But you can come in and pinpoint that with someone in person.
Yeah, you know, I don't know why I just thought of the visual. It's like those little like pads you can put on a chair that have like a little massage to it. And you're like, this is like kind of doing something versus like a deep tissue massage where you're like, oh,
yeah,
okay, that changed my life, you know?
That's a great way to explain it. So do you do any preset classes, or is all one-on-one specific to that person?
Yeah, so right now I still work mostly one-to-one. I'm starting to put out some courses. They're sort of geared towards business, but they all have an underlying theme of subconscious somatic work. So, and some element of that, like right now, my course is like unlocking your expression. So that's like unlocking your sacral chakra, your throat chakra, like being able to speak up for yourself, being able to stand in your leadership. And so there's like some element of how it applies to your business, but honestly, it could benefit anyone in their day-to-day life. So there'll be a lot more courses coming out like that around like identity and making money and things that I think can really apply even if you're not a business owner. And then I have some group hypnosis that I do as well as just like a community thing.
That's so cool. It does spark my interest, because I'm like, I have trauma from, I think everybody has trauma from being a child at some point in time about something, right? And I've been able to be aware enough to know that that's where it came from, you know, whether it was, and I mean, trauma is a very powerful word. Don't even know if that's what I would use for myself.
Yeah.
But just like you're saying, just memories, like maybe it was slightly negative or even slightly positive, and it shapes your personality, right? But the Joe Dispenza stuff, I've listened to a bunch of him speaking, and I'm like, man, like this is because nobody talks about it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is very, very interesting. And I feel like I'm getting that same, you know, chemical release when you're talking about it, is I'm like, yeah, this is exactly how I felt when I was listening to him. But I'm starting to think maybe I should sign up with something too. Cause I think the first thing is being aware that you have faults or you have things that you can work on. So is everyone that's coming to you, like, do they know what they want to work on, or are they just kind of like, I need to be fixed?
Yeah. So, you know, this is where I really differentiate as like a hypno coach versus a hypnotherapist, because the hypnotherapist is typically dealing with someone who's like, I have like a big fear or a big trauma. And my thing is more like, I'm helping you step into like a desire or like a joy you have, and inevitably we're going to go to those places, you know, but that's not necessarily well, in my previous program, it was called Clarity and Magnetism. So like those people, for sure, it was like clarity in their life. They were hurting, a little more of like knowing that they're like needing that like therapy type of environment. But now like I'm just working with entrepreneurs primarily and coaches. So it's really like anything you need to do in your business that you know you should be doing, but you don't know how to do it. You don't have to be like hurting or know you have a trauma. And like the thing about it too is like, you know, it's so amazing you have that awareness of like what might be causing certain pieces in your life. But sometimes we don't even know like what the thing is, you know? Like I've had a client who came to me and was like, hey, I just am like a workaholic. I just can't put down work. I'm obsessed with working. Like I can't go live my life because I feel so stressed about like when I'm trying to relax. And then we do hypnosis and like we look for the like subconscious seed, which is like that first memory that caused it. And it was actually an abandonment wound from their dad cheating on their mom. And they're like, I'm a workaholic because I have an abandonment wound. So it's like actually an avoidance of their personal life.
Interesting.
And they never saw it through that perspective. You know, they were just like, oh, it's stressing me out that these people are like pulling me away from work.
Yeah.
So the mind is very interesting, the way it can even like camouflage things from you, because you might have like for her, it was like she had no emotional charger on that memory. She was like, oh yeah, I went to therapy. Like, I'm cool with that. Like, I didn't care that happened. But then when we went to the child self in hypnosis, it was very emotional.
Wow. Yeah, I think with me, with being a business owner, my problem is I've been that guy. I've been like just work all day, every day, 7 days a week. And I'm trying to kind of get away from that, like we talked a little bit about earlier with having a kid now, but I'm more focused on not working. Like, and I would always brag, oh, dude, I'm doing 14-hour days. And I was, but like, I'm realizing more as I'm leveling up. And it's funny too, because like, I'm sure there were guys that realized this when I was telling them, yeah, I'm 14-hour days. And they were just kind of like, yeah, you'll get there. Because now I'm starting to see, well, I could probably work 8-hour days and be more efficient and not have to do 14. And so that's my big struggle right now in my life is how do you be more efficient on things? I don't want to be busy. I want to be efficient. And I'm not very efficient. And one of it's because I talk too much. So like if a customer comes in or a friend comes in, I'll sit there and BS with them. But I also have to realize I have this balance of keeping relationships and personal relationships with people too.
Yeah.
And so it's a hard thing for me to like figure out like, well, I wasted an hour talking to that guy, but was it really wasted?
Yeah.
And could I've been doing work and being more efficient? Or is it that important to have these relationships with people? So I kind of have this struggle balance going on right now.
Yeah. No, I so understand that. And truthfully, like building relationships is really important. I wish I was better at that, actually. I'm so...
Start a podcast.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm so good one-to-one. Like, I'm so good, like, being deep with that one person. Like, so I do great with my one-to-one clients. And, but socializing in the real world and like making those connections, my partner is so great at that. And like, he's like such a connector. Like he'll, the story of how he found the podcast, State Studio and all that stuff.
So your partner, Cyrus.
Yeah.
So he's been on the podcast maybe 3 or 4 episodes ago. So so people, when she's saying this, that's who she's talking about. So you can understand he's very fluid in talking.
Yeah. He's great with talking with people. And it really is like a skill set because then you start to connect all these people like, oh, I know a person who can do this and I know a person who can do this. And I think that's invaluable, like for me being someone who wasn't as open and social, not that I don't like people, it's just like it wasn't my personality. Like I paid to get a lot of the relationships that have supported me in building my business, which is beautiful. I 1,000% recommend like pay to get in the room with someone if you can, like easy exchange, right? You used to have to be like, hey, can I pick your brain for coffee? And like come up with this whole thing. Now you can just pay there's coaches for anything you could ever want to do, which is so cool. But yeah, I think like that's an amazing skill. And it spreads the word. Those people are going to want to support you back. So yeah.
Well, and that's what this podcast has been for me. It's an unplanned benefit that this has been is like I felt like I knew a lot of people, like probably knew someone that could do just about anything. Like I had a big network already, just of friends and family. And then doing this, it's been insane, the growth that we've had. Yeah. And Mallory and I don't know if we're keeping this private or not, but I'll talk about it. We started a Facebook page of the guests that have been on. And then we're inviting those guests into the page to network with everybody that's been on. And so we're episode 63. We've had some duplicates, so call it 55 people that have been invited into this group to network. And then like we've had, I don't know if we did one with Emmanuel Zavelos and you and him would get along great. Yeah, and so I'm like, there's different things like that we can make these connections with people. And even like we had Justin Prince on that is a great public speaker, travels the world, amazing. Right? And it's like, now you have a connection with him because you've been on the podcast and I have a connection with him because of the podcast. Right. Yeah. And so it's been a cool thing to be able to take those relationships to the next level and level up the relationships. Yeah. And just the people that we've brought on, because we do just bring everyday people on, but it seems like the everyday people that are like sometimes overlooked. That's not the best way I want to put it, but it's like everyday people that are like the backbone of society, right? And so those are the people that we all have a connection with now. And so when you were saying relationships, I'm like, I'm telling you, I talk about it more now than I ever have with the podcast. people will say, well, this is what I'm trying to do and I'm not sure how to get there. I'm like, you should start a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And that's the thing about St. George. Like, I can't speak a ton to St. George because I'm new here, but there really is something to be said about the way people build community here, because it's like, you talk about Justin Prince, like he was in, Brody Fawcett's real estate school. And then we saw him speak there. And then Cyrus got invited to this really intimate room of like 20 people where he was speaking. So we were like even closer to him. And then you've had him on the podcast, and it's just like such a small world. If I was still in California, it's so funny. I thought, oh, I feel so grateful to be raised in California because I have so much opportunity at my fingertips. And some ways that's true. And in some ways, like, I've had way more opportunities here because it's that way. Like, I would just be in California, like, oh, Justin Prince, like, he's like this big speaker. And then like here, I'm like in the room with him, you know, which is so weird. You would never think that about being in this small town. But California, it's like, it's so big that you honestly almost don't get those opportunities. You really have to be like offering something of huge value to someone. Whereas here, it's just like, hey, like, you're a really good person. Like, I know this other person. Let me connect you. And it's like just so genuine, you know?
And I think the willingness to connect here, like, I've never really lived anywhere else. I've been here since I was 7. But I feel like everyone's, at least that I talk to and I'm with, everyone's very, very willing to get on a phone call or get on a Zoom or even just text you. I mean, I have guys that like Troy Latham, he was one of our first guests. He's actually my sales rep for one of the brands of safes that we sell. But every now and then he'll just send me like just a quote, just like a good morning, here's a good quote to start your day type of thing, And it's like, it means so much to me because I'm like, I'm so consumed with everything I have going on a daily basis that it lets me kind of like connect or disconnect and be like, yeah, you're right. Like, I need to put a little more focus on that. Or it'll even be like, hey man, you're doing great. Proud of you. Yeah. And I'm like, this is like a sales rep, right? Like, the connection that him and the connection he just has with people, I don't have anything to do with it. It's just who he is. The connection he has with people, it really drove me to want to work with him. And I'm glad that I get to now. And it's like Justin Prince is the same way. I'm like, any chance I can get to be around that guy, I'll take it.
He's just like, you just see it when I don't know Troy, but when you see him speak, like, he's so genuine. And yeah, it's really cool.
And a lot of his stuff is like, I've been through this. This is what I'm going through.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the stuff you can learn from the most when someone has an experience. And not only that, but they can relate it to anyone. And Justin does that well.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like also remembering that just people are just people. Like, that's what my mentor reminds me of. My mentor works with Olympians, like people who are making millions of dollars in gambling. Like, he's just worked with like extraordinary people. And when I pick his brain about it, he's just like, people are just people.
Yeah. They're just them doing their own thing.
Yeah, it's true. We're all just people.
Well, now that's kind of the point of the podcast too, is like, I take it back to the second that it dawned on me that I wanted to do this. And I always butcher what the song's called because I can never remember, but there's a country song that talks about the famous people in his little town. And he talks about like the sheriff and the school teacher and, just the people that make up society.
Yeah.
And I thought like, gosh, that's here. That's how this place is. And some of these people that can get up and share knowledge and be able to change people's lives. And really I started this because I feel like people feel like they're so alone in their struggles.
Yeah.
And that's really why the podcast I ever thought about doing it, was to try and, like, if we made one person feel like there was someone else that had the same struggles and made it out, like, that was a win. I mean, the whole 63 episodes is worth it,
Yeah.
And I know we have, because I've had a lot of people comment and write back to us. And that's what kind of keeps me going too. And then bringing on people that, like, I don't know the background and I don't know how it works. I'm like, well, I don't want all my listeners to be me. I don't want them to be like me. And that's what's cool about it too.
Well, we got to keep it interesting for you,
Yeah.
with all these new random things that people do. But yeah, hypnosis is up there with that for sure.
Well, and I love coming in and doing it because I'm gonna blast out Justin and Blake because I like to do it and I always do it. But like, I've had a lot of my friends on, and like, they're doing cool things or they're doing niche things or different things like that. I love having just come on and have an hour or two with one of my buddies. but then being able
Yeah.
to get out of my, like I hadn't met you until you walked in the room. Right.
I
And so
know.
like
I know.
going through that route too, of just meeting you, being able to click, being able to understand what you're trying to do. And for me, I have a little bit of like a small amount of pride where I'm like, hopefully I can help get your message out a little bit too,
Yeah.
and have someone connect. Like if one person ever connected with you over the podcast, like that makes my day, you know?
Oh, yeah, that's really cool. And doing things like this, it's true. It's like it's just even if one person, if their life has changed from it, like how cool is that? It's wild. I've done, little things like this here and there, podcast interviews, articles, and like it's just amazing the people that even years later are like, "Oh, I read this article and I found you." And I'm just like, I didn't even think that article was going to matter. Like, I thought it was just like a cool thing I could share on my social media and show that, I'm getting my message out. And then they become like a dream client or something and transform their whole life.
Right. Off of one thing. And in my life, I've had instances like that. And it's things that I was like, it felt like such a burden to do. And then down the road, it ends up being such a positive thing.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
And so what's the next step? How do we normalize all of this? How do we get the message out that people are doing this? It's helpful. Like I like how you said, I think you said gentle, like it's not anything that's crazy. It's not woo woo. It's not, whatever word you want to put to it.
Yeah.
But so what's the next step? How do we normalize it?
Yeah. I think it's really just about doing, like, first of all, more people getting involved, like, with the profession would make a big difference, just having more accessibility. I know when I first started hypnosis that I was interested as actually, I'll tell you this story because it's a really cool story, but I was really interested in trying hypnosis. And actually I had all these, I told you, like, these series of things that's what I actually worked in hypnosis. But the thing that led me to hypnosis was actually me and a girlfriend. We were sitting on the couch and we both couldn't get over an ex, and we were like, what do we have to do? Get hypnotized? And we were like joking, right? And then we were like, okay, but could we though?
But like, that's a thing, right?
Yeah, we were like, we could though, right? So we started like Googling hypnotherapists in the area, and there's like some people who came up, but it's just like, and this is why I love social media, because it's like when you look something up and you read a Yelp review, you're like, I don't really know how I feel about that. Like, there's not really like good pictures. Like, social media, you can get a really good feeling for who someone is and like kind of know if they're your person, So, but anyway, I went home that day and she called me later and invited me to go to a sound bath. I was like, great, yeah, I'm in. And I'm driving.
What's that? Hold on, what's that?
Oh, a sound bath. It's like they have these like crystal bowls and almost like how you can make a crystal glass make sound.
Okay.
They have like this padded wand thing, and as they go around the bowl, it makes these like vibrations, and it's very healing. There's certain frequencies that each bowl makes, and you can do a lot of like emotional healing and physical healing through that.
Wow, that's cool.
Which is really cool.
I've not heard of that. I was like,
You
wait, what?
haven't? Okay. If I see one, I'm gonna have to send it your way. But so she invited me to this sound bath, and I'm driving on the freeway that day. This car switches lanes in front of my car, and in bold letters it says "Hypnotherapy works!" exclamation. And I was like, okay, like that's kind of weird, because we were literally like, can we, like, does it work though? Like, what does it feel like? All like the questions that everyone has before they try it. And I was like, okay, that's weird. Then I go to the sound bath, and the first thing she basically says is like, who here is interested in hypnosis? And I'm like, me. I'm the only one who raises my hand. And then at the very end, she did like a demo where she just did something with my hand, and she was like, that's hypno. And it was so gentle. I was like, give me your info. Like, I'm in, you know? And yeah, the rest is history. I forget how I went down that train, but going back to like getting hypno out in the world, it's like, it's just really like allowing people to see what it's really like. Like for me, that's like education. It's like speaking more, getting on more podcasts, like really having people underneath me that are also trained in it. Long term, I think my dream is to maybe have some sort of like nonprofit where it doesn't cost people to do hypnosis. So there is that accessibility of like, yeah, if you can't afford it, because those are the people who need it the most, truly. It's like, even at the time when I started, I had money, and, my hypnotherapist, I always tell her, I'm like, you let me rob you, because she charged me like $100 a session at the time. And I was like, okay, that's like the most I'm comfortable paying. Now I look back and I'm like, that's ridiculous. I paid thousands to work with a hypnotherapist now. But
yeah. So is that like kind of the base? That was my next question, is what's the basic cost to go and do this with someone? Is it about $100?
So it's really going to depend. If you do it with someone who's like a therapist, what I've seen is that it's like $250, $300 sometimes.
And that's like an hour. That's
That's like an
amount of
hour.
time. That's okay.
Yeah. But you can find people, I don't know, with inflation and stuff now, it's been like a few years, but you might be able to find someone who does it for like $100. But I just want to say personally that like I got super lucky and found someone who is not only truly incredible at hypnosis, but also really affordable. But like I would say that, you're not paying for the hour, you're paying for the transformation. So it's like, you really just want to find someone who is genuinely really good at it. Like the person I want to do hypnosis with next is like $2,500 a session, but I know that one session will completely change my life. So
yeah, it's like, what's the cost of being able to unlock that emotion or move forward or be more efficient or whatever, right? Like, what's the cost of that?
Yeah.
And I had a guy a while ago. Well, I've had a few people kind of mention this to me, but it's like, if you have to ask what the price is, you're not ready to do it. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
that's a good quote.
Gosh, that's so right. And so it's like, how often do you pay attention to prices? And like, don't get me wrong, I'm not wealthy by any means. Like, I don't go out just blowing money because I want something. But it's like, if you think that this is going to level you up, times 2, times 5, times 10, like, what is the price tag of that? And is there one? Like, are you willing to pay whatever, like, if you could double your income today, like, what are you willing to pay for that for one session? $2,500 isn't that much money.
Exactly.
If you can double your income.
Yeah. And you, depending on what you do, you absolutely can double your income with hypnosis. My mentor does it all the time with people. So, I mean, I don't work with people in that area as much, but like, if that's what you want, yeah, let's do it. Absolutely. Yeah. Because you can fine tune your performance so much with it, and just like being consistent and, like you said, like saving more time in the time you're actually doing things, being really focused.
Yeah. Would you say that someone gets more out of it being very broad and not knowing what they want to fix, or someone that really just pinpoints something? Because I think like your first introduction, you're probably going to be like, I know I need to kind of work on some things. You know what I mean? Like, it may not be so focused, pinpointed.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's something, like, for me, that would be something I don't know if I'd want to go spend money or spend the time on doing it when I don't have, that one thing I want to unlock.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I definitely think, you do have to have some level of a desire that you want, or like an outcome, because like you have to know where you're going to get there, basically. And to a degree, right? Because I'm going to help you figure out the pieces in between as well. Right, so
that's kind of what I meant.
So, yeah, it just depends. I mean, it depends. You don't have to know the answer. You just have to know that you want something from the experience, and it's important enough to you,
Yeah, just the want to go in and be bettered and to use this method to do that. That's enough, regardless of what it is.
Yeah. And I think like having a general idea, because like I said, it's like you could come in and be like, I know that I want to get clarity on like what I want to do with my life. Or it could be like, I know I want to double my income this year. Either one is fine. And the way we're going to get you there could be totally different than you think, right? Like you said, you might think it's like a focus thing, but really it's like a subconscious belief around being successful. Like, we don't know until we actually explore the subconscious. But definitely, like, you have to have some awareness to even know to get you in the room,
It's so cool, though. It's cool to see people just being an entrepreneur, business owner, because that's the first thing. Obviously, it's the first thing that stops anyone from doing it, is that fear and that unknown and like I call it the golden handcuffs all the time. It's like, you're so set and everyone's telling you that you're so set, and then you just crumpling that up and lighting it on fire and going and doing your own thing. And it's
Yeah.
terrifying, but it seems like, and I don't know why. I mean, it's probably a lot of things, but recently, the last couple of years, I've been hearing more and more and more stories of people doing it.
Yeah, yeah. I just like the way society is changing. It seems like it doesn't make sense to have a normal job anymore. I don't know if you feel that
I
way,
do.
but like I just, after everyone started working from home, it's just like the culture of the world shifted. It feels like, I don't know. I'm very like new earth. I feel like we're just like totally changing the paradigm of how life is meant to be lived. And it's like, it's so funny. You see memes and it's like, rebelling in like the rock and roll era, and it's people with like mohawks and like whatever, and then it's like rebelling now and it's like families on a farm with like fresh milk, and you're like, yeah, that's like kind of true
Yeah.
though,
Yeah.
yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what happens the next few years.
Yeah. When COVID happened, that was the first thing I was telling people was like, these big corporations need to be careful because especially when everyone started going and working from home, like that's going to cause a lot of ripples because there's going to be, full on business, like the actual building, like there's going to be people that don't have to occupy buildings anymore because they're doing it from home. There's going to be people that don't have homes and they're just going to be traveling around because they can work anywhere they want. Like there could be
Yeah.
all these kind of ripples that get sent out there. And then also like people that are working from wherever they want and they're dragging their kids around. Like, is that positive or negative on the kids? Like, and so I had all these
Yeah.
like multiple conversations of people that went anywhere from like, is it good for someone to go home and work by themselves versus a team setting?
Yeah.
Or, and there's a lot of technology that kind of helps that out now, but all the way to like, your kid moving schools every year because you can live wherever you want instead of living in one house, and driving to work and back. And like how
Yeah.
that's going to affect the future families when these kids end up being 20 and they've just been moved around and this is all just theoretical, right?
Yeah.
But I was like, man, this could really go a lot of different ways. It could be extremely positive or extremely negative. And one thing we talked about was schools. Like I already have strong beliefs about public school already and how I think it shouldn't exist, but I'm like, now you're putting all these teachers at home. You're not sending kids to school. They can do it all online. Like, be careful because you guys may not have schools to go back to. Like once everyone realizes that, and that's kind of just another conversation we had, but it's interesting what ripples that's going to put out there. And really, since we're on the subject, like what other healing is going to have to be made of things we aren't even aware of right now, that aren't even a thing right now that someone's going to have to go through 10 years from now.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about. I have some previous clients who their kids are already like homeschooled and in co-ops, and they're like doing like unschooling as they call it. And their kids are making like finding arrowheads and like working with like metal and metalsmithing, and like it's really cool to see, but it is going to be really interesting to see how things shift. And I like to really look at it from like a spiritual and like optimistic perspective, that even though it doesn't feel that way, it's like when you look at like, I don't know if you believe in the Matrix or not, but if you look at it from like a Matrix perspective, it's like the world went into like a very feminine state, right? The feminine is like we turn inward, and that was like COVID. We all started working from home. We all kind of like pulled away from society, and so it's like we were in this huge healing of like the feminine, and now supposedly we're in this healing of the divine masculine. And so I think like if there truly is this spiritual element to things, that maybe we won't see so much of these like societal problems, because we're going to naturally start to go to a like healthier way of living. Like obviously it won't happen overnight, but I do see people potentially going back to like kind of like a commune living lifestyle. And like, I think that would be really good for people, I was just talking to Cyrus about this the other day, like, how people come home from like camp or like big trips with their friends and they feel depressed and they feel sad. And I'm like, yeah, because we're supposed to live in community. And that's like our brains literally telling us that it's like we're going back to an unnatural way of living, So
That's interesting.
we'll see. It's really going to depend how brave people are to say, yeah, I actually am going to go and take my money and like build this like city for people to like have community space or whatever that looks like, we'll see.
Yeah. I've been I kind of do it kind of joking, but kind of serious. Like I said, I have a 2-year-old, but lately I've been talking like, I don't even think I'm going to put him in public school.
Yeah.
And like, we'll check the Derick Lake podcast 2027.
I know.
Check back and let me know what Will's doing with school. But
yeah.
I think the same way. I'm like, I can teach that kid everything he needs to know. And if there are things I can't teach him, the internet can, good or bad. I mean, for better or for worse, the internet can, YouTube can, podcasts can. Like, think if a kid, and they need to have social stuff with school. And that's what everyone kind of, the rebuttal everyone says. Like, well, they need to have some kind of social. And I'm like, okay, like he can get that other places. It doesn't have to be public school.
Yeah.
And I think like my age, if you were homeschooled at my age, you were weird. Like it was like a stigma on the kid. And I really think that especially people that are, and I wouldn't consider myself far right, but people that are the far right, I think are going to start pulling their kids out of school and start home teaching them.
Yeah.
And I think that it's going to become more normalized.
Yeah, I think like the culture is definitely shifting, right? People are starting to feel like every system that's in place right now is just like we've outgrown it. It's not working anymore and it's not shifting fast enough. And like having been a federal employee, I can tell you that it's really difficult to get things done with the way our government moves. Like,
100%.
and that's just genuinely speaking from like even just like the hierarchy of like I'm not allowed to go above my boss and talk to the person who's the culprit of like needing to fix this solution. And then my boss is too busy because they are working 2 people's jobs. So my needs are never going to be heard. And it's just like, there's these constant blockages. So, take that combined with like the fact that our government is a million times bigger than just the federal, hospital organizations. Like it's just people are going to get to a point where they're just don't have the patience to wait anymore and are going to say like, okay, how do we take this into our own hands? So it'll be interesting. I selfishly like the one thing I like about the school system is that it's like free childcare, like that's probably the only thing. And like, I do think the structure somewhat helps with like, and this is where it's like, good and bad. It's like, it helps your kids be more like obedient because they do have to like learn to sit still and like all those things, but also that's like not healthy for kids. Like,
are we supposed to sit still?
Exactly.
Like I don't think we are.
Exactly. And like if society is going to shift, then those things might not matter as much.
Well,
I can't sit still even though I went to school. Yeah,
I think and the thing I kind of rebuttal myself, like kind of devil's advocate with myself on this is like, well, there are kids that probably need to be out of their homes, and there are kids that like that's where they're eating, that's where they have normal food source. And that's where, I mean, it's awful to say. And if you haven't been in the situation like I haven't, it's hard to even understand.
Yeah.
But there's people that the person that cares about them the most is that teacher at school. You know what I mean? And so there's like, I'm not saying we need to take all that away from people. Yeah. I'm just saying it's going to become a lot more common for people to be homeschooled. Like I don't think it should shut down.
Yeah.
It may, if we all pull our, the 75% of people pull their kids out of school, it might. But yeah, you're right. Like there still needs to be, and maybe it just scales down. Maybe instead of, I don't know what it is, 6 classes of the same grade and there's 30 kids in each class. Maybe there's 2 classes with 30 kids. Maybe it just scales down.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's free. We pay it with our taxes, but it's free.
Yeah.
And so like, I don't know if they adjust that at all. I don't know how it works, but I'm not 100 and in Washington, so I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, totally. I know. It's weird. Like we live in this, like just a time of like so much unpredictability. Like I don't think anyone could tell you where we're going to be in like even 2 years, let alone 4 years. Like what is normalcy anymore? Like it's just, we chose to be born in the strangest era of all time. Yeah. Which it's funny, as a kid, I always had this feeling that like something crazy was going to happen in my lifetime. And I remember feeling that from the time I was like 4 or 5. At that time, like I was, I was raised Christian, so I was like still religious, and I would just like talk to like Jesus and God and be like what? Like, I don't know. Like I had this like relationship where it was almost like I just like knew, like, maybe that was my intuition, whatever you want to call it, but never could have predicted this is how it would go, you know? And that wasn't like, because you could say like, well, history repeats itself and like crazy things happen every generation, but I was like a little kid. I didn't know. And I have friends who felt the same way. They were like, I just knew when I was young that like I was coming here at this time to live through something really weird, really crazy.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with some of my family members over the weekend about this. And my aunt had said, because I was like, that was one reason I was scared to have a kid. I was like, the world's awful. Like, I don't want to
Yeah.
bring in, it's a kind of like a cop out, right? Like, the world's awful. I don't want to bring a kid into this. But I had said that a number of times. Like, how am I supposed to navigate a kid through his life with how the
Yeah.
world is right now? And my aunt had said, you know, the generations that are born into the time period are supposed to be born into that time period.
Yeah.
And so it kind of gave me a little bit of like relief being like, well, he's more special than I am because he was born. You know what I mean? Like he was born in now, when it's a little crazier than when I was born. And so it
Yeah.
kind of gave me a little bit of relief, I guess, being like,
Yeah.
okay, well, he's meant to be here. So I just need to not screw him up.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And, my perspectives on that, I agree, have shifted a lot where it's like, I used to think it's like, you're like burdening and like, putting this like, like bestowing this terrible fate on your child. Whereas now it's like, I think that your child is like a spirit that chooses you, and like she said, it's like they chose to come here at this time. Like, I don't know if that aligns at all with your belief systems, but in the spiritual community, like that's kind of the vibe sometimes. Like you choose your soul contract, you choose what things you're here to face. And it's like, who knows? Like maybe your son is here to literally change the entire world.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I
That's
hope so.
wild.
That's what kind of I went to was, the world's so crazy. Well, that makes me believe that I need to teach him how to be better
Yeah.
that much more. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Like it's more on me now to put that on him because he's going to have more people he's going to have to lead.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I agree. It's not so much about whether to have kids or not. It's just like the level of like responsibility that you have, but like in a good way to just raise a really good, empowered human.
Yeah, I was listening to, I listened to Andy Frisella a lot. I don't know if you've heard of Andy. I think it was him that he was talking about, or it was his brother actually. It was Andy's brother on Andy's podcast. And he was talking about like how screwed up the world is and what they're teaching kids and all this stuff. And he was like, good. He's like, that's just more people that my kid gets to like, he didn't say like rule over, but that's my kid gets to be in more control now because there's less competition because he's just going to go in kicking ass and taking names type of thing,
Yeah.
And it kind of twisted me too of like, yeah, I guess that's the mentality you have to have instead of being like, dude, the world's awful and I hope you make it out alive, type of thing.
Yeah.
Of being like, no, dude, you just have more opportunity to kick ass.
Yeah, that I so agree with that. I really hear you when you say that. It's like I have started to see the world through such a different perspective of like we are always going to have duality.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's like for every like negative and positive force that exists in the world, like it's always going to be a balance and energy can't be destroyed or created. So it's like, even if we want to solve world hunger, we will never solve every problem in the world because there needs to be duality. And it's like, when you look at it from that perspective, it's like, even in the worst of times, like if you choose what you're filtering, you choose what you're looking at. It's not saying that we're like ignorant and you're blind to those things. It's just like, you get to choose what you put your attention on, and that's where you focus will grow. And so it's like you said, it's like there's a lot of positives. It's like even like with social media, it's like there's so many people distracted. There's no better time in the world to start a business.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of people, when they start businesses, for example, it's like their parents, in the beginning, we talked about how our parents were like old school and they thought getting a good job and the 401k is like the thing. It's like, they didn't have the option to be like, oh, well, like I'm really like good at this random talent, or like I'm really obsessed with this random hobby. Like, let me make it a business. That's only our generation.
Yeah. Cause it take them years and years and years to gain any traction.
Yeah.
Where now it's like, you can gain traction in a day.
Yeah.
I mean, if you target the right audience and maybe you boost a post or whatever it is on social, or even just the internet as a whole, like even having a website, like if you think about that, like they didn't have any of that. And so you can accelerate all of that so much faster now. Yeah. I've been talking to a lot of people about that recently. It was like, now is the best time. We're in the best country ever created right now. And you have the most opportunity. And then I'm like, and if it doesn't work, dude, you can go get a $14 an hour job at Arby's and get in some government housing. Like, like there's always something there's always going to be a job. Yeah. I think it was Gary V talking about this the other day. He's like, go take a risk, go fail. go do it again, go fail, go do it again.
Yeah.
If all of that, if you end up just getting wore out and you decide, and it isn't for some people, like I'll
Yeah, it's
openly
true.
say that it isn't for some people, but guess what? That there's always going to be people hiring. That
Yeah.
job will always be there. And so it's like,
Yeah.
why not? What's the reason to not go take a risk? I mean,
Yeah.
fear, I get it, but like, let's work past that. Now what? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I love Angie Lee. She always says ready is a lie. I don't know if you know who she is,
Yeah.
but yeah, she says ready is a lie. And it's true, if you think you're not ready to start, that's exactly why you should start, because the first part of what you do, it's not going to be up to like your standard or how you want it to look, but like you're going to have to put in that time no matter what, whether it's a year from now, whether it's today. So just start, like when I started my business, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to start a business, and I knew social media was a good tool. And I started posting like inspirational things for probably like 6 to 8 months before I ever knew, because I was like, if I can grow my social media, I already have a base.
Yep.
And I look back and like with how social media has changed, it's like one of the best decisions I ever made. Not saying I had like a crazy following, but like, if you can have 1,000 followers instead of 400, if you can have 15 instead of 1,000, that little boost is just even more like credibility when people land upon your
Yeah.
page. And I don't really believe that like failure is a real thing. Like, one of the most important like pieces of wisdom, I guess you could say, that I would share with anyone who wants to start a business is like lengthen your time horizon.
Yeah.
If you keep going, you can't fail. You'll either pivot, you'll meet someone, you'll find something, a seed, like it's going to lead you to where you're meant to be.
Yeah. I mean, if really, it's like cliche, but if you look at it as learning versus failing, it changes
Yeah.
the whole thing changes.
Yeah,
And
totally.
we're taught as a culture which ingrained into us, regardless of what we do. If it's public school, not getting an F. If it's sports, it's not losing. If it's whatever it is, we're ingrained not to fail.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to be the best in 100%. Like I was not a very good student, but I don't think most people had 100% in their entire school career.
Yeah.
So like, but you're taught like an F is just devastating.
Yeah.
Or losing the baseball game is devastating, or striking out is devastating. And it's just
Yeah.
not the case. It's like, okay, so let's go back. Let's look at the tape. Let's study. Let's read this. Let's maybe talk to a teacher. Let's talk to a mentor, figure out what we did wrong and avoid that pothole down the road. And then what you had said about coaching, it's like, so I have the opportunity to go pay a very small amount of money in my lifetime, like as a lifetime as a whole, that small amount of money, to be able to catapult myself up to where these other people are talking, and the whole group, not even just like the coach himself, but getting yourself around that group of people. I'm in 2 different masterminds right now. And it's like the people that you surround yourself with, even if you're not even communicating with them on a daily basis, like both of them. So one of them does a meeting 2 days a week and one of them does 1 day a week. And even just seeing other people and the struggles they go through. And I'm not much of a reader, but for me, it's like I get to read a book every week because I get to hear the stories of people and I get to hear how they overcome them. And even like while they're in the struggle, they get to talk about it. And then the group helps them like, hey, this is what I would suggest. This is what I would do. And so I don't know. It's a big thing for me to go through those groups and be able to see, one, that other people fail. Because I think that's a big thing is you put these people on a pedestal and you don't believe that they do anything wrong. Or that they have enough money to correct what they did wrong.
Yeah.
But everyone starts at some point, right? And you got to build up to that. So I don't know, like I would encourage anyone to get into whatever you're doing. First, go find someone that does it really good, like you did, and find out how to get in their space and buy their time or be a part of their day, whatever it is,
Yeah.
And then, figure out how to surround yourself with positive people that are doing the same thing.
Yeah, totally. It's really interesting, right? Because like coming back to the subconscious, we have certain parts of our brain, we have like mirror neurons where we literally do learn from being in proximity with people. So it's like you actually do become better at what you're doing. You do actually get to bypass certain lessons and like learn how to embody that level of leadership that's required, that level of confidence through getting in the room with those kinds of people. So yeah, if you can pay to get in the room with someone who's already doing it, who's already, made 100,000 or $1 million doing what you do, like the price to pay to be around people like that is so small. And if you really show up and give it your all, like those people will become your peers in time, like no doubt. So it's, again, just we live in like the most wild time, like the amount of information that's available to us, the amount of access, like because things like coaching exist, like when I was little and, with my parents' perspective, I always thought I have to like invent something. Like I literally thought like I needed to become like an inventor with like an engineer and like something wild. And then I realized like, no, you literally can just get really good at something and then you can like teach someone else how to do it too.
Yeah.
And it's so cool because it's like you're just growing and then you get to help other people grow and bring them with you. Like it's really cool.
Yeah. What's more satisfying than that? Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, tell us how to get in contact with you. I know you have social media. Like I told you, I kind of stalked you a little bit on Instagram before we came on because I hadn't met you before. So tell us how to get a hold of you.
Yeah. So the primary way to get in touch with me would be my Instagram. It's Lea, Lea _ Fuentes, Fuentes, not a Z, S. And then I'm also on TikTok. So same thing, Lea Fuentes _ The underscore is at the end instead, but same spelling. And I'm not super active on TikTok, but I'm trying. I'm going to probably start doing some like little like mini hypnosis for people. So that'll be a really cool way that people can, plug in, see what it's like if they're curious.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for people like, at least like me, where it'd be hard for me to set time aside to go do that, but I could have like 5 minutes while I'm at the store.
Yeah.
And I can just turn that on real quick and have it run. I'm like, maybe people are doing that. I don't know. But like that would be a very, very easy way for a large number of people to consume it.
Yeah. Yes. Because I think TikTok is like, you can do like 3 minutes now. I don't know. It might be growing, but so there'll be like just a little place you can take like a deep breath and tap in. And then also I'm going to be starting to do monthly group hypnosis sessions. So that's a really cool way for people to plug in, like especially if you're a coach or entrepreneur. But honestly, even if you're not, like a lot of the topics will be applicable to other people as well.
Sure. All right, guys, that's episode 63 with Lea Fuentes. You can go on, check out her social media. She's got a lot of posts on Instagram. You can go on there. I think she's going to be doing some big things here pretty soon. So make sure you go follow her so you can be a part of it, and let's normalize everything we've talked about today. All right. We'll see you guys next week.